This is White Plains Week, the weekly news roundup. With your moderator, John Bailey, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter. Jim Benaroff, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. And Peter Katz, noted broadcaster and journalist. White Plains Week, what's happened, who are the newsmakers, and what's in store for the future. The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented Fridays at 7:30 and again on Mondays at 7 p.m. here on Channel 76. Now, White Plains Week.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. White Plains, and all you stakeholders out there. It's time to plunge your stakes in deep. John Bailey with you on the White Plains Week Roundup News Show. And of course, we're coming to you a little bit early due to the 4-day President's Weekend coming up. And so therefore, but there was a lot of news this week. In fact, Peter.
Yes, John.
My senior correspondent.
Yeah, actually, we are recording this program on Wednesday. It's the first playback on cable is on Friday. It'll be out on whiteplainsweek.com and on YouTube, so you can see it whenever you want.
Right.
And as we're recording this, we can tell you that for the past 4 out of 5 days, we have had snow in one form or another here in White Plains.
Right.
And the city has managed to survive.
Right. Here's a shot.
And we have plenty of snow covering the cars and the driveways and the lawns.
Right. It's very, very picturesque. It's like Placid without the cold temperatures.
We're looking forward now to a plunge in temperature for the upcoming weekend. So by the time you're seeing this, you probably will be shivering much more than we have in the past. This will be probably the deepest cold snap of the winter, so they say.
Deep cold. And
there was anything but cold. There was nothing frosty about the ceremony up in Albany this past week, as former Westchester County District Attorney Janet DiFiore was sworn in as Chief Judge of the New York State Court of Appeals. Some of the other headlines: the U.S. Supreme Court agrees to let suits against the Clean Air Act continue, and they suspend temporarily President Obama's executive orders to enforce the Clean Air Act. New York Supreme Court Judge Joan Lefkowitz holds a meeting in her chambers with the French-American School of New York attorneys and White Plains City attorneys. The judge declines to comment on what took place. The city holds its first meeting to gather citizen ideas on how the White Plains Transit District Center should be developed. Now, that's taking place at the library the day after we're recording this program. So we'll tell you what we think might happen, but you'll have to tune in next week to find out what really did happen.
right.
Gas prices dipped below $2 a gallon in White Plains as oil prices worldwide continue to decline. The city advertises for a new commissioner of public safety.
But don't we have one?
But sources say the present commissioner of public safety, David Chong, is going to stay on. So why the ad?
Why the ad indeed?
The Common Council schedules a public hearing on the city's historic preservation ordinance. However, the legislation takes away the authority of the Historical Commission, something fairly new, to designate a building or a property a landmark. The Board of Education prepares to accept the retirement of its budget director for the last 10 years, Fred Seiler. He's the business manager for the district. That's supposed to be effective in July. Leslie Tompkins, director of guidance and counseling, will also retire, as will David Cabrera, assistant principal at the high school. 9 teachers also are retiring. And the White Plains High School football field is closed to the public as construction begins on public restrooms by the stands at the field.
How thoughtful of the school district. You know, just taking away that those porta sands that generally we have to use. But once again, White Plains in the forefront.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, and there was something that relates to White Plains that happened in New Hampshire.
Absolutely.
New Hampshire primary this past Tuesday.
Talk about cold.
And what happened was that in New Hampshire, they count write-in votes. Now, we all know what happened with the major names on the ballots in the Republican and the Democratic primary up in New Hampshire, but we have found out from WMUR-TV in Manchester, New Hampshire, that there were lots and lots of write-in votes, and on both the Republican primary and the Democratic side, the write-in votes got almost twice the number of votes that come out for the White Plains school board elections.
Yeah, I mean, that is fascinating. I think we had about 1,100 last year, and this is...
and I don't know, you're not going to be able to photograph this, this very well, but here is the WMUR-TV rundown, and you can see that on the Republican side, we heard, if we watched the results, about the top 10 people, but there are dozens of names. Same thing on the Democratic side. We had the results on the top 2 people, but lots more names, lots of write-in votes.
Yes.
Interesting results in the New Hampshire primary. George Pataki, our friend, got 78 votes.
In New Hampshire.
In New Hampshire on the Republican primary.
People remember in New Hampshire.
And I think
They remember.
White Plains Week may be the only place you're going to hear about that.
No, probably not.
At the top of the ticket, Donald Trump ended up with 35% of the vote, leading something like 19 points ahead of John Kasich, who got 16%, Ted Cruz 12%, Jeb Bush 11%, tied with Mario Rubio, also at 11%. Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey, 8%. So he may be teetering on the brink of having to drop out. We'll see.
Falling off the lifeboat.
Carly Fiorina, 4%. Ben Carson, 2%. Paul Rand, 1%. Mike Huckabee showed up with 0%. He got a total of 198 votes.
So listen, is this beginning to shake out? No, we're just cruising towards Super Tuesday.
Well,
March
Super
the
Tuesday,
1st.
we've got South Carolina coming up. They've got Nevada coming up. So Bernie Sanders ended up with at least 60% of the vote on the Democratic side to Hillary Clinton's 38%. That's 22% difference. That's quite a clobbering
That's
that Hillary
a whack.
took.
That is a real whack. And quite frankly, are we seeing the decline and fall of the Clinton empire?
Well, I think that it's entirely possible, as many political pundits say, that we will see a turnaround in South Carolina, that she will do extremely well.
Well, that's what they were saying about New Hampshire, too.
It could be also that Bernie Sanders has hit a nerve and has managed to generate the kind of support that Hillary Clinton was hoping to generate among the young people, among the millennials, among women.
And like I was having a discussion with Brenda Starr last night, my wife, and I said, you know, it just seems like Sanders is filled with a lot of platitudes, somewhat Trump-esque, only with a liberal slant. And she agreed with me. I mean, whenever Brenda Starr agrees with me, it is like major news. So at any rate, she feels that he is appealing to that same platitude sloganeering that really resonates. That's what Trump has done. Trump is tapping into the anger, and Mr. Sanders is tapping into the anger.
We will have to see whether the Trump-Sanders phenomena continue.
It is a phenomena. In fact, as I mentioned last week, it is the ugliest, dumbest presidential campaigns on both sides that I have seen in a long time.
Well,
it's ugly, man.
Sometimes it has gotten slightly ugly. Although I must say that on the Democratic side, Sanders and Clinton have been extremely civil toward one another, even though they do differ deeply. But on the Republican side, there's been a lot of name calling.
Right. In fact, I mean, Mr. Trump actually called Mr. Cruz a name, and this week, which was really castigated by the media that he did this. Now, you can't have that. What is he going to do when Putin balks at something?
Well, Donald...
I mean, come on. He's not going to change.
Donald Trump at one time was the fair-haired boy here in White Plains. Remember when Louis Capelli brought in Donald Trump and his name was applied to the city center project?
Right. We gave Donald Trump his start publicly. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
So that's the most interesting thing, though, that I discovered about the New Hampshire primary was that they do actually count the write-in votes in New Hampshire.
Yes.
Now, here in White Plains or in Westchester, apparently, I don't know what happens with write-in votes.
Yeah, they throw out all the write-ins for us.
Yeah,
so you don't know. We are actually the people who should be Mayor of White Plains.
No, seriously, I've been told by several people over the years that they have written in my name for one office or another, but I never get notified or see that I've actually had votes cast.
It's funny you should mention that the city doesn't notify too many people about much.
Anyway, up in Albany this week.
Big story here about
it was.
Janet DiFiore, local girl making good.
It was on Monday. Governor Cuomo swore in former Westchester County District Attorney Janet DiFiore to be the state's new chief judge. She follows Chief Judge Jonathan Lippman, who retired, and she's the second woman chief judge in the state's history. The late Judge Judith Kaye was the first. And Cuomo had very high praise for DiFiore.
Janet's career has never been about Janet. It has always been about the public she served. And that, my friends, is the key to Janet's success. She'll make this court a better court, and she will write the next chapter of judicial progress into the history books. Raise your right hand. You're ahead of me, Janet. Repeat after me. I, Janet DiFiore,
I, Janet DiFiore,
do solemnly swear
that
I will support the Constitution of the United States
I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of
the office of the Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals
the office of the Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals
and of the State of New York,
and of the State of New York,
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations.
Governor Cuomo, colleagues, partners in government, family, friends, I pledge to do my very best to uphold the rule of law, to improve upon our great system of justice, to honor the purity of purpose of this great court, and to ensure that our justice system is worthy of the highest respect and confidence of every man, woman, and child who comes through our doors seeking justice. Thank you all for being here.
Of Appeals usually sits was filled to overflowing for the ceremony. Observers noted that among those in attendance was U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara, who's been on a bit of a crusade against corruption in New York State government. And as of now, it's not certain whether there will be a special election in November to fill the position of Westchester District Attorney, which DiFiore vacated, or whether the governor will make an interim appointment to replace First Deputy District Attorney James McCarty, who has been working as acting DA here in Westchester. John?
Yeah, we haven't heard anything about that from Mr. Estrino yet, whether he would protest that. Who knows?
But, protest the governor stepping
right.
into
Now,
make
what
an
is
appointment.
Interesting, though, and Joseph Spector, I believe is the reporter for Gannett, who reported on this story, noted that Governor Cuomo will, by about the early 2000s, will have appointed every member of the President's Supreme Court. And that's basically, Court of Appeals. And that's interesting because what happens when you have this term limit where you have to retire at 70?
Yeah.
You lose a judge. It turns over.
Actually, in his speech, Governor Cuomo mentioned that not only would he be a governor who appointed all members of the Court of Appeals, but his father was the only other governor to have done so.
Yes, that's what happens when you get those double terms. But another point to make is that the U.S. Supreme Court made a huge decision this week, and that is a court that you were appointed to that court for life until you decide to step down. Now,
and that's one reason why this upcoming presidential election is deemed so crucial.
Yes.
By many in the country, because the incoming president, the next president, likely will have the opportunity to appoint 3 members of the U.S. Supreme Court.
Key, and the Supreme Court's decision was that they're going to allow the hearing of lawsuits from polluters and their allies in state government who want to kill the Clean Power Plan that President Obama was going to implement.
Clean Air Act,
Yes.
The one focus of the Obama presidency has been to do something about air pollution, especially from coal-fired power plants. And the industry, of course, would like not to be so tightly regulated in that area. One thing that the Supreme Court did was they suspended the president's executive orders regarding this issue. So really
stalls it out until maybe after the presidential election.
You may hear from constitutional scholars who are aghast at the issue which arises when one branch of government supersedes the actions of another branch of government.
Well,
In
I
which
mean,
case,
you could make a case that the Supreme Court is overstepping themselves here.
That may be an argument that we may hear in the next few days or weeks or months even, because we have the judiciary now saying what the executive branch cannot do.
But there is no court above the Supreme Court to appeal it to. What's going to happen? I mean, but this is a balanced court. So you can see what happens if you have a court that's all appointed by the sitting governor. It's
Sitting
not good.
president, not
sitting
governor.
president. Sitting president or sitting governor. Right. Be that as it may, let's go to the shocker of the week, and that is that we have the downtown White Plains Transit District first public hearing and presentation on Thursday night, last night, when you're seeing this program.
Well, if you're seeing this program on Friday night,
Yes.
it was last night.
Yes.
We're recording the program on Wednesday, so it's really tomorrow night.
Right.
So we can't tell you,
what
happened at the meeting that's going to take place tomorrow, but we can tell you what to be careful of, actually.
I would say so, because this is an important meeting that was not noticed too well. I mean, was there a citywide mailing to every resident? I don't believe so, because I never got one.
If you did go to the meeting, you'll now know the answers here of what actually did happen.
Yes.
But if it was a meeting where there was now they hired a consulting firm, Parsons Brinkerhoff, which is it's a world-renowned consulting firm. They've been involved in many projects, such as the Big Dig in Boston. You remember that project that went years over budget and billions of dollars over budget, and still is controversial today. Right. They've been involved in projects with the MTA, Metropolitan Transit Authority here in New York. And the MTA, of course, runs Metro North, and Metro North will be involved in this. So what you want to see is this truly open? Are they soliciting ideas from the general public, or are they looking for validation of the ideas of the main stakeholders?
They're
preconceived ideas of, say, the city of White Plains, or Metro North, or the MTA, or the state of New York.
And the area
or
we're
their own.
talking about is this.
The red circle there is the area they're talking about. It runs from approximately Church Street
Over
through
on
part
the right?
through part of Battle Hill.
Yes, if you're in Battle Hill, you should be at that meeting.
It encompasses the county center building. It extends down past the train station and to where the Bronx River Parkway
Includes the Galleria.
enters New York from the south. The Galleria is part of the area
is,
inside of the circle.
Whose future is up in the air as we speak.
So the question would be, again, depending upon what you see at this meeting, was the meeting as open as the comprehensive plan process under the city's administration many years ago?
And Susan Habel's update of that plan about 5 years ago.
You remember that hundreds and hundreds of people were involved in presenting ideas, in discussing ideas, in validating ideas.
And wasn't there a lot
during
of
that process.
pre-info about that?
There was.
There was a lot of and that's what's interesting about this. There hasn't been given the public hasn't really been given a itinerary of what's really going to happen, or what did happen
Now, the
last
city,
time,
there-
and
there-
what they
there
should
is-
be prepared to think about. They haven't done that.
There is a website on this transit district, and you can access that through the city's website, and we'll have to see just what they put up there about this meeting, which is taking place, as we said, tomorrow night.
Yes.
Or if
well,
you're watching
there's,
this Friday, it took place last night
Right.
at
Now-
the library.
Another semi-shocker in a pleasant way.
And
Peter.
one thing which bothers me a little bit was that they scheduled this at the library on a Thursday night from 6:30 to 8:30. Now, if you're coming home from the
Bring
city
in
or
some
from
takeout.
work somewhere,
Yes.
I mean, wouldn't you rather be able to have dinner first before you have to go off to the library for this meeting at 6:30?
Amazing how many of these meetings are scheduled in that 5 to 7 commuter hour. Amazing. Now, gas prices hit a new low. We spotted this sign down at the Lexington and Ferris Avenue, I think. Right. But at any rate, 197.9, that's astounding. And
That was the first below $2 a gallon I had seen in New York. In New Jersey, the prices have been below $2 a gallon for quite some time, largely because the gas taxes in New Jersey are much lower than they are here
right. And
in
then
New York.
and-
But I've heard from others around Westchester County that the $2 price mark has been broken.
yes, up in Yorktown, it's been a little bit below that for a while now.
That also should be beneficial for people who heat their houses using oil. Oil prices should be down for heating oil.
Right.
Diesel prices should be down.
Yeah, so the
A lot of
economy
things
should
should
be
be down.
booming now, spending all that extra money you're spending on gas.
Con Edison electric
oil.
prices went up slightly, actually, after having been down at around 5.9 cents per
Right.
kilowatt hour.
Now, another semi-shock to me was seeing this ad for the Commissioner of Public Safety in the Journal News on Sunday. And
As far we had not heard anything about Commissioner David Chong leaving,
yes, I mean, why would you run this ad?
and we checked with various sources around the city, and no one knows anything about him leaving.
There is speculation that this is an ad they have to run to prove to the state that they can't get anyone interested in the position, so therefore they can continue Mr. Chong in the position even though he is retired officially.
I really
No,
don't know.
several people have told me
he
that.
did retire from the New York City
Yes,
police
right.
force. We know
Exactly.
that many years ago.
But be that as it may, it is there, and I asked the city, well, what's his status? And they didn't get back to me. So
no
but
reply,
no surprise there.
No
Right,
explanation
no
as to
surprise
why
there.
that ad ran.
Yes, and speaking of a retirement coming up, Fred Seiler, shown here. his retirement was going to be accepted by the Board of Education Monday, although that meeting was canceled.
Now, he is the business manager.
Assistant Superintendent for Business, and he has crafted the last 10 years of White Plains school budgets.
Now, the retirement comes as no surprise.
No.
I mean, it had been anticipated for at least a year up to this point. But there's another retirement over there, Leslie Tompkins.
Yes, and she is a long-time fixture in the school district and will be missed. She presently handles guidance and...
An assistant principal at the high school also is retiring.
Yes, David Cabrera.
And there are 9 other teachers who are retiring.
Yeah,
so
now let's not replace them.
Well,
let's
that
save
would be
some money.
That would be one way to cut the budget.
But of course,
wouldn't it?
it's teachers I think you have to replace because they are,
I think the issue that the school district
administrative stuff.
The issue that the district is facing is whether they have to actually add staff and how many staff and whether they have to be bilingual because of the need to do some things in Spanish.
That's what they need to do. And now, coming up, is going to be a hire for Mr. Seiler to replace him, and that is going to be a ticker spot because the Board of Education is on target to hit the $230 million mark if you're rolling over it in the next 4 years.
Well, we know they're spending a little bit more money on restrooms that they're building. We had noticed up at the high school there was some sort of construction project going on. They were digging
and they're putting in restrooms.
What looked like to us excavation for electrical work or something, but it turns out that they're putting in foundations for restrooms.
And this is not unusual,
stands.
Michelle Schoenfeld says.
And so we were quite surprised to see that there was a sign up. The gate was locked to get into the field and track.
And you had a pleasant surprise at the Westchester Broadway Theater the other night.
Indeed, we saw a really nice show
Here's a
called Always Patsy Cline.
That is the cruise
that was
ship.
from the cruise ship.
That's right.
This is the
There
Westchester Broadway Theater shot. It's a bio production, biographically oriented production, featuring a lot of Patsy Cline's country and western music. And it tells the story of how a fan of hers in Houston, Texas, embraced her when she was in Houston for a public appearance, and how they developed a relationship over the years, and how Patsy Cline sent this fan a whole series of letters which would end Love Always Patsy Cline.
So it's not just a
Hence
cover
the
act.
name,
It's not a
Always
cover
Patsy
act at all.
Cline.
It's an actual story.
Even if you don't like country and western music, I think you will like this show. The music is great. It's infectious. People in the audience were clapping, were tapping, were humming, were joining in singing. It was just a great evening at the Westchester Broadway Theater.
You all come, right? And she was a really great crossover artist. She popularized country music on the hit charts, the popular
Patsy
charts.
Cline, yeah.
And just as we've popularized real news, this is John Bailey saying good night for Peter Katz, Jim Benorovis on assignment, and good night for White.
White Plains Week has been a presentation of White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com, in cooperation with Channel 76. Comments may be emailed to WPCNR@AOL.com. The copyrighted print White Plains Cityscape by Leonard Weber is used courtesy of the White Plains Presbyterian Church. For information on its availability, you may contact the church at 761-8585. The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented Fridays at 7:30 and again on Mondays at 7 p.m. here on Channel 76. For White Plains Week, this is Seth Benoroff speaking.